everyone. I am really excited today to introduce our Jack and Karen Sugden and Transcendental Meditation. You know, I meditated a lot during my life, and I never really loved it. I liked having done it, but I never really liked meditation. It was kind of like yoga for me. And I kept hearing about, kind of in the periphery, Transcendental Meditation. And, you know, I heard that Oprah was doing it, and Jerry Seinfeld, and Tom Brady, and Mick Jagger, and Rupert Murdoch, and, you know, Ray Dalio, who is a hedge fund guy. And I thought, what is it? I didn't even know what it was. And so I just, you know, kind of noodled around, and I found Jack and Karen in Dummerston, and they actually teach in Princeton and in Dummerston. And the experience for me, and they'll tell more about it, but I just thought I'd share why I wanted to bring it here and what happened. You know, I have a business, and I'm a mom, and I take care of my own mom. And so I'm very busy, and I have a lot of energy. And one of the things that I realized is that energy and kind of peace of mind were two things that were really, really important to me, and a really valuable commodity that I wasn't always able to maintain. And when I started doing Transcendental Meditation, it was so effortless. And the peace was so unusual. You know, I don't want to make it bigger than it is, but it was so profound. I went and played tennis. This was like, I learned from Jack and Karen, and then I went to go play tennis, and I said, oh my goodness, I thought I was like in slow motion, but in fact, my world, my outside world, my mind was calm, and my outside world had slowed down. And so everything felt like it was so easy. And those moments continue. I practice it, you know, daily, which is something I never thought I would do. I didn't have that kind of interest in meditation, but it is so effortless and so impactful that I try to share it with as many people who might be interested, and let them make up their own mind about it. So Jack and Karen are, you know, just like in so many places in Vermont, you just have these gems hidden in the mountains, some, you know, where these people are, where the extraordinary abilities are, you know, unseen, but then they're just here in these small towns. And Jack and Karen are certified teachers. They've been teaching for years. They have a profound amount of information, and they're incredibly generous. And so I will let them explain more about TM. And I'm just delighted that they could join us here. So here's Jack and Karen Sugden. Are they on?
Thank you so much, Meg. Can everybody hear me? Let's make sure my audio is working properly. Everyone can hear me? Good. All right. Good. Well, thank you so much, Meg. And thank you to the Rotary Club of Brattleboro. You do so much for the community, and I want to thank you for that. And just listening to some of the things that you do, I'm very impressed with everything that Rotary Club is able to accomplish, and particularly on this local level in Brattleboro, and I know worldwide. I'm going to talk, and I'll try to be brief in talking about Transcendental Meditation, but I thought it would be maybe more engaging if I showed a few slides as I talk. And hopefully we'll have enough time where if you have any questions, we could answer some questions at the end about Transcendental Meditation. But thanks for the introduction, Meg. That was very good. And so I'm going to share my screen if you give me a moment here. Sorry, I have to set this up because, all right. Can everybody see the screen now? I guess everybody can see it.
Yes.
Great. So the question is, why meditate? You know, it's interesting that just last month, there was a report from Boston University researchers who sent out a questionnaire to 33,000 college students. And basically, it was a survey on their state of their mental health. I was surprised. I just read this a few days ago, and I was absolutely surprised that 83% of the students reported that they were dealing with anxiety and feeling it impacted their performance in school. And of those, 50% were dealing with more regular anxiety and depression. This is alarming. And it's indicative, I guess, of the state of society today on what we're going through with the pandemic and isolation and all the things that are happening. But even throughout I would guess throughout the entire population, the adult population as well, there's high levels of stress and anxiety. And this is where meditation becomes relevant. Because first of all, meditation is a very effective tool for getting back to balance. And I'm going to go into specifically transcendental meditation. Um, some of you may be practicing other forms of meditation already. And maybe if there's time at the end, I can tell you a little bit about the difference between transcendental meditation and other forms of meditation. But one thing we know is that all meditations engage the mind differently, and there's different effects. There's different results from the practice. You know, you're looking at this Why Meditate. This was a forum sponsored by Fortune magazine. And on the panel was Arianna Huffington was the host. And on the left is the CEO of JP Morgan Global Wealth Management. And what they were talking about was how important practicing meditation is. And Barry Summers, who is the one shown on the left, was talking about that he learned transcendental meditation 10 years ago and never misses a meditation. Practices it twice a day for 20 minutes. And how important it is for his productivity. And he adjusted his schedule to be able to get it in. He's very busy, as many people are. But he said he changed his routine. He goes to bed at 8 o'clock at night, and he wakes up early. He gets his meditation in, and he meditates again later in the afternoon. And he adjusts his whole routine. He said even when he had social events, he would schedule them for 5 o'clock. So he's home at 8 o'clock and he's in bed. And it's that kind of, you know, it was transformational as far as the way he described it. But this is something, you know, back in the 60s, transcendental meditation was popular on college campuses. You may have heard about it, maybe when you were younger. Now it's popular in corporate offices, and JP Morgan, Goldman Sachs, Bridgewater Associates, which is run by Ray Dalio, all have integrated transcendental meditation into their programs there, their health programs. So it's something that has been shown that it is a extremely valuable tool to maintain that performance level under a lot of stress that's coming at you all day long. And so it's a common thing now. I like to just talk a little bit about what transcendental meditation is. It's an easy and effortless practice, as Meg has already indicated, that it's easy to learn. We teach this same technique with the same instructions to children as young as 10 years old. They easily get it. In fact, they get it even faster than an adult does because they just have no expectations of what they should be experiencing. But this technique is something so effortless and so easy. And the reason is because it's a natural technique. It uses the dynamics of how the mind works for the mind to go from an active level that's always active, and that's our experience. This is our waking, everyday experience. Our awareness is directed towards activity all day long. So it's directed outwards towards, you know, through thoughts, emotions, feelings, perceptions, engagement in activity. And that's one level of the mind. That's just one level of the mind. That's our active level of the mind. But in reality, the mind has layers to it. I mean, psychology will call the sub layers of the mind subconscious, but they're it's awareness that's just not being tapped into, because when one level is active, like the waves on the surface of the ocean, but if you dive in, the ocean is silent. So there's this active level and there's this silence. The silence is already embedded within our consciousness on the deeper levels of our conscious awareness. Now, meditation then, transcendental meditation, is a technique to take the mind from that active level, which is always moving. The mind is always in motion. This is our experience, right? It's one thing and it's the next thing, and it's the next thing. We have thousands of thoughts going through our head all day long. It's always in motion. But underlying that, the mind is always progressive. It's always looking for more fulfillment, more success, more progress, more happiness. The mind is seeking that out. It's a dynamic process. So if the mind is always moving, how do you get it to become still? So that's the question. The technique, this is where a technique comes into meditation. That same dynamics of the mind that's always directed outward in our everyday life, we turn it back in. So we close our eyes, we sit comfortably in a chair, just like you're doing right now. You close your eyes. Now the mind still is dynamic and it's moving. But setting up the right conditions now, the mind will start to move inward. Now that inward direction is to less active and less active and less active states of the mind. So the mind is like layered from active to less active to less active to less active. Ultimately, the mind can actually be at a total state of rest beyond even the activity of a thought. And that's what transcending means. It means to go beyond the activity of the mind, the activity of thought, of thinking, where the mind is just left to itself. And that's the most powerful, most energized area of the mind. Now, that could happen for moments in meditation. But at the same time, what's happening is the mind is moving inward. But the body is also involved. So the body is going to deeper and deeper states of rest. And what you find is that as the mind goes in to less active states, the physical body is getting into deeper states of rest. And when the body's at a deep state of rest, the body performs a miraculous thing. It detects any blocks or imbalances and wants to release it. We call this stress. You know, when you have stress is not the culprit. It's how we respond to it, how we react to it. We can take stress in, or we can be resilient and throw it off. When we take the stress in, it has a physical component which imbalances the physiology. And if we don't have a mechanism to release it, then it builds up and it builds up until we're dealing with a physical problem, a physical disorder or illness. So we know that doctors will tell you that over 90% of the people they see come in from stress-related disorders. So it has not just a mental impact, but a physical impact. So it's important that we release the stress, have a mechanism to release stress. Deep rest does that. So the technique is simple because it's a natural phenomenon. The mind will move, setting up the right conditions, and it'll move. And that's where the instruction comes in. How does it? Just having that experience, oh, the mind moves. And I really don't have to do anything, because any kind of trying to relax, do you ever try to relax? It's not easy. You can't. But if you allow the mind to move on its own, it will go to less active states, and that will naturally happen. Any kind of trying or engaging or manipulating or trying to muscle it to get relaxed would be counterproductive. That's why it's effortless. It's natural. It's the nature of the mind, the nature of the body to release when we're in a deep state of rest, and we get back to balance. And that's why we meditate. There has been over 400 peer-reviewed scientific research studies on transcendental meditation published in major scientific journals. So we have a lot of knowledge now about how the technique works. And I want to show you a few of those research studies. And Meg, maybe if you could kind of time me, so if it looks like we're getting to the end of the time, just give me a signal so I don't go over. But I'll go through this just as easy as I can here, so we don't spend a lot of time. There's been research. This research study is a meta-analysis of 146 independent studies done at Stanford University. They wanted to find out, they know, one thing we know is that relaxation is really the most important thing we can do if we're under anxiety. Getting deeper rest, getting a good night's sleep, all of these things are extremely important. So we know that rest is a therapeutic. So the research wanted to find out what is the most effective relaxation for reducing trait anxiety, which is ongoing borderline chronic anxiety. Nip it in the bud before it gets really bad. They found that all relaxations are pretty much the same, but they found transcending was twice as effective. So this got the interest of more research studies. The Veterans Affairs has conducted research on transcendental meditation over the last decade. They were looking for a lot of returning vets who are dealing with post-traumatic stress disorders, and they wanted to find out, what is there an alternative therapy that we can use? They're all on medications. They all have conventional therapeutic programs for the returning vets, but they wanted to see if there's something they could add that would be effective in addition to everything else they're doing. And they were looking at mindfulness, meditations and transcendental meditation. And what they found was, through the research, they found that transcendental meditation was twice as effective in reducing the symptoms of post-traumatic stress disorder among the veterans. And now it's being made available along with conventional therapy at veterans, VA hospitals in the United States. Not all of them, but they're rolling it out hospital by hospital. So this is something that's being recognized and taken very seriously. The National Institutes of Health, they wanted to find out, and they invested $30 million of research on transcendental meditation. They wanted to find out, is there another way that we can help with the problem of high blood pressure? So they had a 9-year randomized control trial of 5,000 clinical patients who are all on the same high risk factor of heart attack, stroke, or death. They were cardiac patients. They were grouped into, as a randomized control trial. So they were grouped into two groups. They're all on the same medication. So that stayed constant. But one group had a lifestyle and educational program. The other group had transcendental meditation. And what they found was, averaging it out over the course of the study, that those who added transcendental meditation reduced their rates of heart attack, death, and stroke by almost over 50%. That was an astounding, there was no other allopathic or alternative therapy that could produce that kind of result. And that got the attention of the American Heart Association at the time. And they looked at all the literature, all the research that was available on relaxation in context of which one would be the most effective in lowering high blood pressure, an alternative therapy that could be recommended by doctors. So after looking at all of the different research studies on mindfulness and other meditation techniques and relaxation techniques, they didn't find any consistent results that they could get behind, except the transcendental meditation technique showed consistency in the ability to reduce high blood pressure. So they came out with a major statement that to healthcare professionals to recommend transcendental meditation to their patients with 120/80. Today, we have a lot of doctors recommending transcendental meditation to us. So it's something that's now recognized, it's solid. And it's only going, and more research is coming out as we go. This is just the beginning. and more research on other meditation techniques, and transcendental meditation is in the forefront of it all. Now, just going back to Meg, how are we doing? You have to unmute. Are we okay time-wise?
About 3 more minutes.
3 more minutes, okay. So this is just, you know, I was already just talked about this, how the mind moves from the active level to the silent levels of the mind, very effortlessly, very naturally. But when we look at really what's happening now, how do you know? How do you know this? Research can look at and see what's going on in the brain using electroencephalography and identifying brainwave patterns. And here you see someone getting their brainwave patterns shown, and the neuropsychologist had wanted to find out what's happening during meditation, and they categorized it according to how much effort, how much control in the process, and what's happening in the brain. You see, there's 3 different major groups of meditation. There's focused attention, there's mindfulness, that's called open monitoring, and there's transcending, 3 separate categories. And you can see the brain waves are completely different in each one. There's focused attention is more high frequency gamma waves, indicative of concentration. Open monitoring is more reflective and contemplative, characterized by theta. And transcending is completely different. It's alpha 1. But when you look at that carefully, when one settles to that state where the mind gets to that point of stillness, but is still awake, this is characterized by a state of restful alertness. So each one of those lines you see represents one of the centers you saw on the scalp. And when you look at those lines, you see they're all firing in synchrony, on phase. This was an extremely important discovery. It's characterized by a restful alert state, which means that the whole brain is communicating. When the whole brain is firing together like that, the prefrontal cortex is communicating with the rest of the brain. This is utilizing the entire mind-body coordination here. And this has been referred to as brain integration, and it's associated with improving your performance in activity. As Meg was alluding to how her tennis game was impacted by this, it's because it changes how the brain functions. It's also being used in schools around the country, and they're doing their own research, and they're finding a direct correlation between the experience of transcending and their learning ability in school, even looking at intelligence test scores and creativity test scores. So we're really encouraged now, and this is like a whole new paradigm for education to utilize a technique to help develop their performance in school as underlying tool for all their studies and everything they want to accomplish while they're in school. So, so I think I'm going to end it here because I know we only have a few minutes. But what we see for those who've been practicing transcendental meditation, this was a study done by Dr. Norman Rosenthal, who was a 35-year NIMH, National Institutes of Mental Health researcher. He wrote a book called Supermind, and he did a survey of those who've been practicing transcendental meditation for 5 years or more. And what you see is a high degree of self-actualization using Maslow's scale of hierarchy. On a very high level, 5 years of practice, regular, of transcendental meditation produces a complete transformation in how we engage in our life. And that's what meditation is all about. It's not for the meditation, it's for how we engage in our life, how we live our life, how we enjoy our life, and how we use our fullest potential in life. So I think I'm going to end it right there. Sorry if I went over a couple of minutes, but if we have any time for questions, I'd be glad to answer any questions about that. I know that was kind of quick, but any case. And thank you so much for inviting me today.
There is time for questions, and maybe you could take down your share.
Oh yes, sorry, I'll do that right now. Okay.
Question.
Yes, Roger.
Has there been any studies to show the impact on Transcendental Meditation on reducing healthcare costs?
Yes, actually, there has been. There was a major study done in Canada using Blue Cross Blue Shield statistics. And they found that it was a really interesting study because what they were looking at, actually, they did a separate study. There was one that showed there was overall less hospital admissions for those who are practicing Transcendental Meditation. That was one study called from Blue Cross Blue Shield. But there was another study done that was done looking at as people age. It was, I think, a 20-year study. As people age, their increased hospital admissions and healthcare that is necessary and expenditures involved. Was all about the expenditures of healthcare. And they compared the normal population with those who are practicing Transcendental Meditation. They found that those who are practicing Transcendental Meditation, their healthcare, once it reached a certain point, the healthcare costs for those who practice Transcendental Meditation dropped precipitously compared to the rest of the population. So it was a very interesting study, and insurance companies are absolutely looking at Transcendental Meditation. They haven't committed yet. We feel that, you know, with the fact that the VA hospitals are rolling out the Transcendental Meditation program, this is a good sign that insurance companies are going to start taking this a little more seriously. But yeah, it could really impact the healthcare costs if there was large groups or populations practicing Transcendental Meditation. That would have a definite impact. That's what we see from the research so far.
Thank you. Good.
Have you done any classes, if it's the right term, on Zoom? Is this something that?
Oh yes,
that's another. That you could do a introductory course to the members.
Yes. Yes, we've had to shift our method of teaching since COVID started. And fortunately, we developed what we call our digital course platform. So you can actually take the course through a digital app course. And it's like a classroom experience. It's very interactive with videos and questions and answers and responding to the questions and answers. Yes, so we have that in place right now. So we're doing that. We've been doing that since August, and everyone really likes it. They really enjoy using the app for learning their Transcendental Meditation. Although I must say, Carl, that one thing we have to do, though, because this is such a very delicate technique, once you come in for instruction, we follow the CDC guidelines, you know, it's distancing, but you're given the instructions on how to meditate initially, you know, which takes about an hour. And you're guided into that experience we were just talking about, how the mind, once you have that experience of how the mind settles in on its own effortlessly, then you have it. Now you're meditating at home. So within the first day, you start meditating, and then you start the digital course. And it's a three-day program, and we meet with you by Zoom at night for half an hour just to see how everybody's doing, and we have a checking of your meditation to make sure you're meditating correctly. And we also, as a TM organization, we have a lifetime follow-up support. So if you learn Transcendental Meditation, you always have support. No matter where you go in the United States, there's a TM center. You have support for your practice to make sure you're on track and you're meditating correctly, and you can refresh your understanding from the initial course at any time. So yeah, so that's.
Frank, you have a question?
No, thank you. You sort of addressed my question with your last comments, but so my question was, do people typically sign up with some sort of a partner or service, or as opposed to, you know, going out and reading a book and you know, doing the self-taught? I'm not familiar with the approach.
Right. Well, there's a lot of apps out there, and as I said, you know, they're basically guided meditations. Well, this is a very specific technique. It's taught systematically the same way wherever you go in the world. That's why there's so much consistency with the results of the practice. So it does require a personal instruction in order to get the initial instruction, which takes about an hour, as I mentioned, Frank. And but after that, you have a standardized course. that's conducted by actually, he's the international director of the Transcendental Meditation, and he's a neuroscientist. He was a researcher at MIT in neuroscience, and he's a medical doctor from Harvard. And he's the one that leads the course during the digital course app. And then you would come to us for the personal instruction, and we would meet with you in the evenings just to answer any questions you might have. But that's how it proceeds. So it's not something you can learn from a book, because it takes a personal. If I gave you a book to read, you could interpret it completely differently than the next person. You see, because it's all how you interpret it, and so it's not as effective a tool for teaching this meditation.
Thank you.
Do we have other questions? Well, it's perfect timing. We're at the 1 o'clock. So you did a great job, Jack. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Thank you, everybody. Thanks for giving me this time to talk to you. And we're here in East Dummerston, so maybe we'll meet each other or see each other sometime in the near future. We interact down in town a little bit, so I don't know. But great to see everybody's faces, and hopefully we will see each other again.
Great. Well, you're welcome to come to any of our meetings in the future and programs as you have interest, and keep an eye on us.
I would love to. Thank you.
With that, we'll close the meeting off and talk to everyone next week.